Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for another episode of SLMA Radio. Brought to you on behalf of the thousands and thousands of members of the Sales Lead Management Association. It has to do with sales lead management or sales lead marketing. It probably starts here with the SLMA Radio Show. Today, as always, we're privileged to have with us the founder, the executive director, the man behind the curtain, Jim Obermeyer. Hey, Jim.
Thank you, Paul Roberts. Paul is our announcer for all things on the Funnel Radio channel. Our guest today is Cyndi Greenglass, and she's going to address the subject, the 5 most important things Cyndi Greenglass has learned in business and life. This is part of a series of interviews of executives that have experience in business and life in general, and thoughts about living their lives and their business lives and the intertwining of all of these things. And we've ended up with some beautiful series of interviews that have been very telling as people have progressed through their careers. Cyndi Greenglass is a founding partner and senior vice president of strategic solutions at Diamond Communication Solutions. Cyndi has twice been named into the top 100 influential B2B marketers by Crain's B2B magazine, and was the 2012 CADM Chicago Direct Marketer of the Year. Cyndi is a member of the executive management team at Diamond Marketing Solutions, where she is responsible for. She participates in strategic acquisitions and manages the agency's services division. Prior to becoming a direct marketer, Cyndi spent 10 years in the international business consulting arena with the U.S. Embassy, the Canadian Consul General, and the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service. In 2016, Cyndi was named one of the 20 women to watch in sales lead management and one of the 10 most fascinating people in business-to-business marketing. And I believe that because I've known Cyndi for many years, watched her career and watched her work and the direct marketing side, and I've always admired it. She's most recently is now, Cyndi, you're an instructor at West Virginia University, and you're also a host of West Virginia WVU Marketing Communications Today, a biweekly radio program, right?
That is correct, yes.
So we're getting some interesting guests there. So, Cyndi, my job here today is just to turn the microphone over to you, and I'll ask an occasional question that simply says, tell me more. So, Cyndi, tell us about the 5 most important things that you've learned in business and life.
I've had the good fortune to have learned a lot of lessons and made plenty of mistakes along the way. And so finding the top 5 was a little challenging since I had the good fortune to have many to choose from, I guess. The number 1 on my list is what I call the fallacy of work-life balance. We hear everybody talk about it. It's a little bit hard to have a conversation with anyone today and not have them talk about how hard it is to achieve it, how hard they are working towards it. Everybody wants it, and yet we all are having a challenge achieving work-life balance. Boomers are striving for it, and many of us boomers have been rather critical of millennials who talk about how work-life balance is more important to them than perhaps achieving or succeeding in work or where their priorities are placed. Entrepreneurs and high achievers, a lot of them don't have what we would call balance in their lives, and we're critical of that. And so, I've thought about this a lot, and I think that the challenge is that there really is no such thing as work-life balance, and there's perhaps no such thing as balance. I would like to call it all about finding your center of gravity, not balance, because center of gravity will give you your balance. Your center of gravity is your core, and it's what makes sure you don't get pushed around. We all have a different center and a definition of what works for us in terms of how much we tolerate chaos, complexity, what role work plays in our lives, what role community plays, family plays, where that lever, where's that balance, and how comfortable all of those things make us feel. And my center of gravity is very different than yours, Jim. And I've got a really old, interesting story that illustrates this for you. So many years ago, I was a competitive swimmer. I was a competitive synchronized swimmer, which a lot of people like to make fun of the girls in the silly little bathing caps. And synchronized swimming is really hard to do. It's a lot harder than it looks. People think it looks kind of goofy and with all the costumes and things, but it's extremely hard to do. One of the things you have to be really good at is knowing where your center of balance is and your core is, because otherwise you can't float appropriately in the water. So if you've ever seen Jim, take yourself, you ever seen somebody in the water and say, put your arms behind your head and cross your feet? What's the first thing you do? You sink. Because most people don't know where their core is and they don't know where their center of gravity is. So when I was young and swimming, I used to also coach, believe it or not, the college football players, the linebackers, because if you find your center of gravity, you can't be pushed off the line. So I used to have them in the water. And I used to help them find their center of gravity so that when they get back on the line, no matter how hard you push them, you can't push them off the line. And I think that for me, once you find your center, keep it. It allows you to stay firm and allows you to never get pushed over. And you're getting pushed all the time. And that's what life's, and you get pushed at work, you get pushed at home, you get pushed with competing priorities. Keep your core, keep your center, and keep going back to it. That's my first lesson in life.
That's really stunning when I think about it. As I've done these interviews, it's been interesting because obviously it's all about me. And so I begin to think, have I done that? And after about 20 of these interviews, everybody has different opinions. This one is extremely, it strikes home. Very interesting. What's number 2?
Number 2, the graveyard of the high-performing individual achiever. That's what I'm calling this one.
The graveyard
the graveyard of the high-performing individual achiever. And I think that a lot of us can relate to this. Those of us who excel and are known to be the best at what we do are considered outstanding individual contributors and have a lot of our self-esteem and our recognition tied up in being the best at X in our companies. And as a result, we're the people that are usually looked upon to be promoted. In my career, I came up through international business, discovered database marketing at a very early stage. Databases were first being developed by the U.S. government, went on to Dun & Bradstreet, where I got tremendous training in early database systems, and, went on to become a well-recognized database marketing expert. And a lot of who I am in that stage of going through in my 30s and early 40s was, I was caught up. That was so much part of my professional being as being an individual performer and excelling at being the best database marketer I could be. And then you get to that stage in your career where now you want to be a supervisor, a manager, a leader, and you want to move from individual performer to managing others. And it's an exceptionally hard transition to make because those of us that consider ourselves professionals are also professional perfectionists. And we often find ourselves in a position where no one does it as well as we do. We are the best at what we do. And mentoring others and delegating to others are not necessarily tasks that come naturally to us. So you go and get promoted. You have a very strong skill set. You have no training or in being a manager or supervisor, making that leap into that new role. And I see that chasm between being the best you are as an individual contributor to being an exceptionally strong manager is littered with lots of people who didn't transition well, because being a terrific individual performer does not necessarily give you the skill set to be a strong manager, and saying you're not a strong manager does not mean that you are being overlooked or that that is a bad thing. Not everybody who's a strong individual performer is meant to be a manager or leader. Because once you go into that management position, it's not about you. It's about what you do to help everybody around you. It's all about the performance of your team and your team members. It's not about you anymore. That's really tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, how do you make that transition? How do you realistically, we hear about this all the time from a sales perspective, the great salesperson that doesn't become the great sales manager.
Right. I would say anyone who is being tapped for, large companies still do a better job than most other companies in identifying individuals that they want to fast track through or have leadership talent. And anyone who's at a place in their career where they are going to be tapped for management or leadership or are being offered that position, you have to get training. There are skill sets you need to have to be a good manager that can be learned and should be taught. And if your company doesn't offer it, and very few companies do now unless you're in large organizations, go seek them out for yourself. Executive education programs at most major universities have outstanding leadership and management programs. It's very insightful. You'll learn a lot about yourself. You'll learn a lot about different personalities in the workplace, how you have to work with peers that are different from yourself, how you have to change your behavior, which you do when you start to lead and manage, how to delegate, which is painful for individual performers. I would say the number one thing is get yourself some leadership training and tie yourself to a mentor in the company that you look upon as being a really good leader or manager. And ask if you can meet with them on a regular basis, once a month. Ask if they would even let you sit in on some of their meetings. See how they interact and engage. Take notes about it, and then meet with them and say, explain to me why you handled that situation that way, or I noticed that this is how you diffused a situation or did X and X. Or bring your own situation. Say, what would you do if you were me in this situation? That would be my strong advice to them. And, I would say just make sure that your superpower doesn't become your kryptonite.
Okay.
And I had to say that from my personal experience. It is very hard to do.
Very, very good advice. Very good advice. I got my executive training in the U.S. Army as a lieutenant. At the bottom of the officer ranks in the combat arms and infantry, and I came back from the military thinking I knew all there was to know about leadership. And while I didn't, it certainly was a huge help to go through that. I just missed having that mentor through the years. I've got a mentor now, Michael Alexander. We meet every 2 weeks and have for 4 years now. We used to meet less frequently before, but every 2 weeks we show up and mentor each other. So I certainly understand where you're coming from there. What about number 3?
Number 3, always be humble and kind. You can never overlook the power of kindness. I'm a big country music fan. Grew up in Canada, and America's my adopted country, which I'm exceptionally proud to be called an American. And America is country music, and country music is quintessentially American to me, and it just makes me smile. And so one of my favorite country artists is Tim McGraw. And he's got this wonderful song that is inspiration to me. It's always be humble and kind. And, it's just one of the refrains in the song is, hold the door, say please, say thank you. Don't cheat, don't steal, don't lie. It says, when you get where you're going, don't forget to turn around, help the next one in line, and always be humble and kind. That really resonates with me. It's not enough to just lead a good life. I think leading a good life is the price of admission for all of us. It's our obligation to leave the world better than we found it, each one in our own way, and not to wait until we're older and gray-haired. I mean, a lot of us get to a point in our careers or our lives where we say, I got there and now I'm ready to give back. Now I'm ready. I've had a good life, a good career. I've got money. I can give back. I think this has got to be in our DNA every day, no matter how old you are. So teaching community service to our young people, mentoring a new employee, somebody you don't have to have been working that long. You see the new person that comes in, help them along and say, hey, I learned this when I was new and I remember how difficult it was to, navigate the lunchroom or, whatever it is. Help somebody solve a problem. Give of yourself to make your environment and every environment you touch better for you being there, both in your work environment and in your home environment. You know, I do this every day, and thank you for highlighting that. I do teach. I teach because I believe in this. I think that it's not giving back. It's, you know, it's not paying forward. It's our obligation to each other, to teach, to share, to present, to coach, to raise money for charities if that's what's important to you. As a business, we help nonprofits raise money for causes, you know, make the world a better place. So ultimately, discover what you're passionate about in life. Find that passion, whatever it is. Go after it with gusto, no matter what it is, if it's fishing, if it's being a mentor teacher, if it's needlepoint, but go after it with gusto and help somebody else to find their passion.
Really thoughtful. Early in my career, I seemed to do a lot of that. Later in my career, I did less of it, which is usually the opposite. I don't know, it was too bound up in my own thoughts and needs, and to not think enough about other people. And here I am, more towards the end of my career, and I'm trying very hard to make up for what I didn't do earlier. What about number 4?
Number 4, be afraid. I hate horror movies because I hate to be scared. Like, I won't watch them. I can't even stand the music. I hear it, and it creeps me out because it's like, yikes, like it makes me afraid. But when I talk to people, I ask them, like friends, I'm like, why do you like horror movies? Like, what is it about the genre that you like? And I've had them say to me, it's the adrenaline rush they get. Like, it makes you feel alive, that rush that fear does. And then I got thinking, when you are afraid at work, like you have the opportunity to take on a new task. You have the opportunity to put yourself out there in a way you haven't before. Maybe do something you have no experience with. Volunteer or offer to be on a task force or committee. Maybe as an entrepreneur, go into a new market. You're tremendously afraid, right? You don't know what it's going to bring. You don't know if you'll be successful. There's great personal risk. There may be financial risk involved. But you will never succeed if you don't challenge yourself to be a better you, right? So you can learn a new skill. You can learn to overcome things that you find out you're good at. You may fail miserably and suck at it, which I've done a lot of that, where I've tried things going, man, I'm not meant to be that. I'm a terrible media buyer. I tried it. I was awful at it. But I was like, well, okay, I learned something about myself. And then you get known to be the go-to person, like the person who's not fearless, but not afraid to try something new. You're the internal or intra-change agent in your company, the person who's okay with trying something new. And that gives you a differentiator amongst your peers. You're not like everybody else who plays it safe. You know, no risk, no reward. Again, you know, I love my music. So another one of my music heroes, artists I like, is Bon Jovi. And he likes to say, don't get too comfortable with who you are at any given time. You may miss the opportunity to become the person you were meant to be. So don't get too comfortable and don't be afraid to try. You know, what I was thinking is important for you at any stage of life, both, you know, professionally, personally. But, you know, my younger self, I did a lot of it. And I think that what happens with us too, Jim, the older we get, this is one of those things we shy away from. Risk becomes scarier as we get older. We have more to lose, right?
What's the old saying? It's never too late to be the person that you could have been. What about number 5?
Number 5, my last one. Well, this one I learned from my aunt, my 85-year-old aunt, who told me you can never be happy if you are not grateful. She has had a difficult life and has a lot of reasons to be unhappy in her life. She's suffered loss. She's lost a child to cancer. She's had a lot of disappointments and difficulties in her life. And yet she's interesting, outgoing, happy. And I asked her, you know, how do you do it? And she said, gratitude changes everything. Even in difficult times, you need to take the time to acknowledge what you can be grateful for, because we all have things we can be grateful for, even in difficult times. My husband tells me I am eternally the glass half full gal, and I did learn this from my aunt, and I try and hold on to it. Even in every situation that can be negative, look for what you can learn from that situation. Look how to problem solve, and look how to be grateful for the opportunities that were presented by that situation for you. I'm grateful for my family, for their love and support. I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had in the present as they're served up to me. And I'm, grateful even for the learning and the lessons of the situations that have been horrible when I screwed up, because heaven knows I sure have screwed up. And, Jim, I'm grateful for this opportunity to be recognized as someone you feel, as I said at the beginning, is interesting enough to even ask and share.
How did she word that again? You can never be too grateful?
She said you cannot be happy if you are not grateful.
Cannot be happy.
Right. Because people, if you don't have gratitude, grateful for what you have, you're always unhappy. You're unhappy. Why don't I have this? And why did this happen to me? And why did I didn't have any luck? Or this other person has more than I do? Or you need to find gratitude in your life, for your life and for yourself, or you'll never be truly happy.
So far, we've gone through the fallacy of the work-life balance, the graveyard of high performance. Always be humble and kind. Be afraid. Let's see, you cannot be happy if you're not grateful. Really interesting today. I'll ask one more question before we leave. I didn't mean to surprise you, but do you have any mentors in your life that you'd like to mention? People that were your mentors as you moved through your life?
Oh, yes. Jim, I've had the good fortune of having mentors, personal mentors and professional mentors in my life. And one of them I would give a shout out to who comes to mind has actually been one of your guests for this very segment, and that would be Ruth Stevens. I not only consider her a mentor, I consider her a role model. She is, as you know, an outstanding professional. She's a remarkable human being, and I've been very fortunate to have her as a mentor, both in business, how to conduct myself in business, how to network. She's a remarkable networker. She's also a very bright thinker and a very logical thinker. She's somebody who surrounds herself with interesting, capable, and compassionate people. So I would call her one of my mentors.
Ruth Stevens, I certainly agree with you. When you mention Ruth Stevens, I think of someone who's extremely well known in the direct marketing circles, an author, someone who teaches and travels the world teaching, and someone who is always kind and always has a nice word to say. I get these little emails every now and then of something she's read, or she just takes time, and you're right. She is really one of those very special people. Well, Cyndi Greenglass, you've been very helpful today. I really appreciate the road you've taken with us, and as you've taken us along with your career. And you've got this fallacy of work balance, the graveyard of high performers. Always be kind and humble. Be afraid. Basically, you cannot be happy if you're not grateful. And then mentioning one of your mentors, Ruth. You've been very helpful with your time. How can someone reach you, Cyndi, if they'd like to talk to you about some of the things you've talked about today?
You can reach me on email at cgreenglass@dmsolutions.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Cyndi Greenglass. I'm on Twitter @DirectChick, which is my Twitter handle. And I look forward to anyone who has a question, and would love to hear other people's stories. Thank you, Jim. I listen avidly to your program, and I look forward to future guests and what they have to share as well.
Thank you very much. Cyndi Greenglass on the 5 most important things she's learned in business and life. Paul, over to you for our next program on the Funnel Radio channel.
You've been listening to another episode of SLMA Radio, one of the many shows on the Funnel Radio Network for at-work listeners like you.